Hello and welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
And we are reading Jake Jackson's Myths and Legends, which covers world mythologies from all over the world. And this time we are talking about African animal fables. So just a quick, thoughts. What do you think of this chapter, Dad?
It was fun to read, and so I enjoyed it. They were, the moral of the stories were not easy to decipher, I guess, in the sense that a lot of the characters were just bad.
Yes, that's very true.
So maybe they're supposed to be cautionary. I don't know. I would hope so, but I would not want to live my life according to the teachings of this turtle and the spider.
Yes. So the first few stories are about Anansi the spider. And so the first story is about how Anansi became a spider. This is from the Dagomba people of West Africa. There was a king who had a favorite ram that was allowed to roam wherever and basically do as it pleased, and none of the people were allowed to touch this ram. So Anansi, at this time, was just a farmer who was very, very proud of his crop, and the ram came into his crop, and so he decided to try to scare it away by throwing some rocks near it. But he accidentally threw a stone right at it and killed it. And so he tried to think of what to do because he knew that there would be a very, very big punishment if the king found out he killed his ram. And so he sits for a while underneath a shea butter tree and starts eating the nuts, and then he has the idea to just put the ram up in the tree. Then he goes to his friend Kusumbuli, who is a spider, and he tells him of the delicious nuts in this tree near his property. And so he takes Kusumbuli to the tree and tells him that he must shake it very, very hard to get the nuts down. And so Kusumbuli does so, and the ram falls out, and Anansi tells him that he has killed the ram and advises him to just go straight to the king and tell him what he has done to try to avert a major punishment.
Which is what he should have done at the beginning without setting up his buddy. But go ahead.
Yes, very true. So Kusumbuli goes home to tell his wife goodbye, basically, because he knows that he'll probably be killed for this. And she points out that Anansi is tricking him because there's no way that a ram would have ever climbed a tree. So then he comes up with a plan to trick Anansi back. So he goes back to Anansi and tells him that the king was perfectly fine with killing the ram and said that he had no use for the ram meat, so he gave it all to Kusumbuli. And at this, Anansi demands that the meat belong to him, revealing that he killed the ram, so the meat should be his. So Kusumbuli and his wife tie him down and bring him to the king, who kicks him into 1,000 pieces. And that is why Anansi is just a small spider that can be found in every corner of your house. So very interesting. I don't exactly know where the transition from farmer to spider was. I guess it was in the process of being kicked into 1,000 pieces, and each one of those pieces is a piece of a spider, I guess.
Right.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, and then the risk is that those spiders would somehow reconstitute themselves into the evil human Anansi, I guess.
I don't know if he's exactly evil in some of these stories. He's more just sly, a trickster, really.
I would beg to differ, but...
Okay. I guess we'll figure that out.
It reminds me of the scene from Terminator 2, I believe it was, where the newer model Terminator comes back in time, and he's like a liquid metal.
Yes, where he like phases through the bars.
Yes, and then they freeze him like with some sort of like liquid hydrogen or whatever, and then shoot him with a shotgun, I think, and he shatters into 1,000 pieces. But then there's a fire nearby, so they melt and they reconstitute themselves. So we have to be on the watch for Anansi to see if he'll...
Also secretly Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Who?
Anansi, because Arnold Schwarzenegger's the Terminator. And so...
No, that's the wrong Terminator.
No. Oh, it's a different Terminator?
No. Yeah, so when spoiler alert, the second Terminator he comes back again, like a new Terminator, but the same model, so it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he's been reprogrammed to protect the young man who would lead the rebellion against the machines. And he's protecting him from the super cool new version of the Terminator, which is the liquid metal guy.
Interesting. All right. Well, the next story, completely unrelated to Terminator 2, is...
I don't know. I can probably make a
all right. We'll see. After the story, you'll tie in Terminator 2. That's a promise.
All right.
And this story is about how Anansi obtained the sky god's stories. And this is from the Ashanti people of West Africa. So here we kind of see Anansi is, not just a god or a deity in one tribe's beliefs, but he's very widespread throughout most of West Africa. So Anansi wanted all of the stories of the world, so he goes to Nyame, who is the sky god, who gives him 3 tasks to earn all the stories of the world. The first is to capture Onini the python, the second is to bring the Mboro nest of hornets to him, and the third is to capture or kill Osebo, the fastest leopard in the world. And so Anansi goes to his wife, Aso, for advice, and she tells him to get a long bamboo pole to figure out how to go to Anansi and capture him. So Anansi goes to Onini, and tells him his wife says that she believes that the bamboo pole is longer and stronger than him, and so Anansi ends up tricking Onini into being tied to the pole to accurately measure his length. And so in tying him to the pole, Onini is captured, and so Anansi brings him to Nyame. So then Aso tells Anansi, in order to capture the hornets of Mboro, to fill a gourd with water before going to the nest. So Anansi arrives at the nest and drenches himself with water and tells the hornets that the great rains have already started and they must flee their nest in order to survive. He tells them to seek shelter in the dry gourd, and then as soon as they're all in there, he plugs the hole with grass and traps them, thereby capturing the hornets. So then Aso then again tells Anansi to dig a hole where he is certain Osebo, the leopard, will walk. And so Osebo goes and walks along this path and falls into the hole. And so Anansi comes to the hole and sees the trapped Osebo, and so he ties a young tree to the ground and then ties a rope to that tree and tells Osebo to tie himself to that rope. So as soon as Osebo is tied to the rope, Anansi cuts the rope holding the tree down, which slings Osebo into the air, and as he's dangling in the air by his tail, Anansi then stabs him. So Anansi brings all 3 of these things to Nyame, who gives all of the stories of the world to Anansi. And so now one must acknowledge that all stories are gifts of Anansi before you tell any story. So, Terminator 2.
Well, I would say it's more of a reference to Terminator 1, where the hero of that story is describing what the Terminator is. And he says, he's a machine, but he does not feel pity, does not feel remorse, and he absolutely will not stop until he kills you. And so Anansi seems to have absolutely no morals whatsoever, or if he has morals, they are evil morals, because he will do anything to be the caretaker of all the stories, including just murdering a poor defenseless leopard, I guess it was.
I guess so. Well, to be fair, the leopard was clawing at him as it was dangling in the air. And I'm pretty sure these 3...
What else is he supposed to do? He's hanging helpless by his tail. All he was doing was walking through the jungle, minding his own business, and this guy traps him and then tricks him into tying his tail in there, and as if he's going to rescue him. He lies to him. Says, I'll rescue you, tie this to your tail, and then he gets him hung up there and kills him.
I think these 3 creatures are supposed to be, like beasts, monsters to overcome, kind of like the Herculean tasks to become, the god Hercules. I guess we'll probably get into that later, but...
Yeah, but I think like in the Greek, those Greek stories, weren't the bad people that the heroes had to kill actually bad? Like you describe that they had already murdered people.
Yes.
Right?
I think we're missing some context on this story. I feel like, Osebo...
You hope.
Yes, I hope so. I think Osebo and Onini are probably, more well-known figures that have had other stories about them, is what I kind of gather from this, but I could be completely wrong.
Well, even still, he didn't... I don't think he killed the first 2, but he certainly was a cold-blooded murderer of the third.
Yes, you have a point there.
So I'm wondering if he is held up or was held up as some sort of ideal, or I guess so.
I don't know.
Supposed to recognize him as the great storyteller.
Yes. And so the third story about Anansi that's given in this book is Anansi in the Corn Cob, which is from the Karachi people of West Africa.
Another horrible story, but go ahead. It's a good story.
Yes.
But
yes, this one is pretty brutal, yes. So Anansi asks for a corn cob from Woburu, who is what Nyame was called by the Karachi people, and he says he will give him 100 slaves in exchange for it. And so Wobari is pretty, amused by this, completely confused as to how this could happen. And so Anansi goes down, and he comes to a village, and he asks the chief to store the corn safely in this secret hiding place. But in the night, Anansi retrieves it from the place.
Wait a second. It's important that he says it's a God-given corn cob that he is just the holder of, and so he needs to put it in a safe place or suffer the wrath of the god.
Yes, very true. And so in the night, Anansi takes the corn cob and throws it to the chickens, and in the morning, he blames the chief for losing the corn cob of the god.
Because he's a horrible, horrible person. But go ahead.
Yes. So Anansi then demands that each of the villagers in the village give him a basket of corn in payment, because of course this was the corn of the gods and it's basically irreplaceable. So Anansi takes the corn and then begins walking again, and he finds a man with a chicken on the road, and he trades his corn for the chicken. So he goes to another village, and he asks for a secure place for the fowl of Wubari. So he's again claiming that this chicken is sent from the gods. And so again, he kills this chicken during the night, and he smears the blood on the chief's doorstep, and so, of course, blames the chief, and then demands 10 sheep in exchange for the death of the chicken. So then he moves on, and he goes to this village called Yendi. And so outside Yendi, he sees some people. This is pretty brutal. He sees some people carrying a corpse, and he offers to carry it for them because they look very tired. He offers to carry it into the city if they just lead his sheep away. And so he gradually kind of slows his pace as these people are in front of them. And once they're out of eyesight, he goes into Yendi by a separate route, and he says the corpse is the sleeping favorite son of Wubari.
And I think everybody now knows where this is headed. Yes,
this is pretty awful. So in the morning, he says that the only way to wake him is by flogging. And so the corpse is beaten, and he tells him, and the servants kind of come back and say, he's not waking up. And so Anansi just says, well, beat him harder. And so the corpse is beaten harder. And so eventually Anansi says, I'll go see for myself what's happened. And then he tells all these people that they've beaten the favorite son of Wubari to death.
Oh my God, you murdered him.
Yes. And so he pretends that he's outraged. Yeah. He pretends that he's so distraught that he demands 100 slaves in exchange for this life. And he brings them to Wubari. And then Wubari then declares him chief of his host. So he rewards him for stealing a corpse and exchanging it for slaves.
Yes, I'm not sure what the moral of any of these stories are. Just it's odd because there's no, like, I'm used to like the Greek stories. Usually, if you do something horrible, there's eventually some comeuppance because your virtues or your vices overcome your virtues or whatever the case. There's always like some nemesis that comes and gets you. But I guess here they just keep getting rewarded. I don't know.
I guess, a cautionary tale kind of would be if somebody, comes to your village claiming that they have something that's given to them by the gods, look into it a little bit before, you just wholeheartely believe them. So
it seems more like the stories about Satan or a demon at the crossroads, offering, in exchange for you to sell your soul or, some sort of too good to be true deal. Now these aren't too good to be true. They're just nice people that help him out.
Yes.
And then he's like, oh, you killed this guy, or you guys lost this thing, and very manipulative.
Yes.
I guess you'd say he's clever, but my gosh.
And so I guess that kind of goes back into the character of Anansi as a whole, and I think it's pretty meaningful that he's characterized as a spider. Particularly it's kind of easy to see where you get like the storyteller from, especially like this is a lot of thing that's common in a lot of myths. It's kind of like weaving represents storytelling or fate or those sorts of things. And so with having a spider kind of connects all these things together in the form of stories. So I think that's pretty clear. But in terms of like the sort of trickster sort of personality that Anansi sort of has, what do you think like the significance of being a spider has to do with that? If you have any thoughts on that at all.
What do you think? Why don't you share your thoughts?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm not like too well versed in any other spiders in mythologies. But I guess you could kind of see like the trickster like traps people in his ploys. And I guess that's kind of where you would kind of get that symbolism of the spider weaving a web and tricking the people, tricking the flies really into coming into this web and getting stuck in his traps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I didn't really, know why it's all about the spider.
Yeah.
It's because I guess maybe I'm just thinking of Charlotte's Web. A nice spider.
Yes, there's a nice spider in Charlotte's Web. Good job.
That's right.
Yes.
But I don't think there's any other fables or stories that are shared about spiders other than Spider-Man.
Not that I can think of.
Which, by the way, we saw Venom.
Yes, Venom 2, yes. I did not see it, yes. One.
I saw it with your brothers, although I bought tickets for all three brothers, but the number 3 son was tired, so he didn't go. He had a long day. It was okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's vaguely related to spiders and Anansi, so thank you for that.
Well, wasn't Venom a Spider-Man?
Yeah, he is a Spider-Man villain
character.
Yes, you're correct.
Yes. And he has like this alternate personality, and then there's a bad guy in it that had who was a serial killer. And I think the funniest part of that whole movie, and this is not a spoiler, but the murder, the serial killer bad guy, was in California. And the funniest part is that he was going to be executed by the state of California because he was a murderer, and that would never happen. He may have gotten a hotel room and maybe a basket of flowers or fruit basket or something, because that's what California would do to a killer.
Yes, thank you for sharing your complaints with California. Very good song used in the trailers for that movie, though. One by I think it's the version that's done by Three Dog Night.
Oh yeah,
very good song.
One is the loneliest number.
Yes,
I don't know if that was in the song. If it
in the movie, it's in the trailers. I know that.
Oh, in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it makes sense because the part of the story is that they separate for a period of time.
Oh well, spoilers.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think that's widely known, isn't it?
Well, I haven't seen it. I didn't know that.
Okay.
Well, that's completely unrelated. Time to talk about the tortoise stories. The next several stories are about the tortoise. It's a common figure in African myths.
I was waiting for the hare to show up, but he didn't. So I guess that's Aesop's fable, I guess.
Yes. Although there are some similarities, I think.
Yes, I agree.
So starting off with Tortoise in the Wisdom of the World, which is from Nigeria and West Africa. So the tortoise awakes one morning, angry that everyone is as wise as him. So he decides to gather all the wisdom in the world, and he puts it in a gourd. He decides he'll charge people for it. So if anybody wants any wisdom, they have to go to the turtle and pay him money for his wisdom. And so then he decides he needs to hide it in a tree. And so he ties it around his neck, the gourd that is. He ties it around his neck, and he tries to climb up the tree and hang it there. But as he climbs, the gourd just keeps getting in his way. And so as he's
I was confused by in I think two of these stories there's a reference to a turtle trying to climb a tree, and I've just never even considered a turtle trying to do such a thing.
Well, I guess
can turtles climb trees? Tortoises, I should say.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I guess if it's a very angled tree, yeah, I would think so, maybe. But I mean, anyway, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good observation. And so Hunter, that's passing by, comes up to him, and he suggests that he tie it to his back so it doesn't get in his way. And so at first the tortoise is like, oh, that's a great idea. And then he thinks for a second, and he realizes that for the hunter to have had this great idea, he had to have stolen some of the wisdom from the gourd. And so he tries to run away from this, threatening figure that just offered him advice. But in his hurry, the gourd falls down, and it shatters, which scatters the wisdom all over the world. And now nobody can ever gather it in one place ever again.
That was a good story about hubris.
Yes.
He thinks he has all the world's knowledge and wisdom in this stupid gourd, and he's trying to climb a tree to keep it away from everybody. And this yokel hunter happens. And the story is funny because the yokel hunter is watching him with amusement for some period of time while this stupid turtle is trying to climb a tree with this thing banging on his front. He says, "Why didn't you tie it around the back, you dummy?"
Yeah.
And oh, well, thank you. And then it's like, don't. It's like a Simpsons. Don't. He's got some wisdom. And then it crashes to the earth, and now everybody has to share the wisdom.
Yes, I guess it's a cautionary tale of making sure you don't always think that you're the best.
Yes. Well, it's that you can't. The wisdom is not something that you can hold to yourself alone. Yes. And if you try, you're probably dumb.
Yes, that's very true. So the next story is about the tortoise and the baboon, which are from the Swahili-speaking peoples of West Africa. So the baboon and the tortoise are very good friends, and so the baboon invites the tortoise to his wedding. But when it comes time to eat, all the food is up in the trees, and so tortoise has a very hard time trying to get up into the tree, and by the time he gets there, half the food's already eaten. And so when he gets up there, the baboon even insists that the tortoise must eat sitting upright in order to be respectful because, you have to act like the other baboons while you're up at this wedding. So the tortoise is very ashamed because as he tries to sit up, he keeps falling back forward and all the other baboons are laughing at him. And so he plans to trick the baboon on his own wedding day. So
because that's what you do. You don't just say, "Hey, man, that's kind of rude." Instead, you set up your buddy. Now I'm going to be married next week, and I'm going to get you back.
Yes, that's a very rational decision.
It's a good thing to do. Yes.
And so before the guests arrive on the tortoise's wedding day, he burns the grass in front of his house, so creating a big patch of soot in front of his door. So when it comes time to eat, he insists that all of his guests have clean hands, because nothing bothers him more than dirty hands at the table. And so the baboon realizes his hands are somehow covered in soot, and so Tortoise sends him to the river to wash his hands. So the baboon comes back, and again he steps through all the soot and comes back with dirty hands, and Tortoise keeps sending him away until all the food is eaten without the baboon. The baboon is very, very ashamed because he did not get a chance to eat, and his hands were consistently dirty.
Yep, so the tortoise had his revenge.
Yes. Yeah. Good for the tortoise, I guess.
Not really.
No.
I'm sure he lost a friend.
Yes.
He's mad about how they treated him, and then he just hassles the baboon. He like the baboon has more of a defense than the tortoise, because the baboon's just having his wedding ceremony consistent with his traditions, and perhaps he should have been more understanding of the tortoise not being able to participate fully and all that kind of stuff. So there's maybe some criticism there, but what the tortoise did was intentional. He said, I'm going to stick it to this guy, and I'm going to make it so that he can't enjoy my wedding ceremony. Why would you do that? You're at your wedding ceremony. Why would you exclude this guy who was your buddy like 2 weeks ago just because you fell over and the dumb baboons laughed at you?
I mean, I guess like the moral of the story is to, not shame anyone, I guess. There's a lot of this comes up in a lot of African myths, which I was kind of surprised by, but don't, shame people based on their physical appearance or abilities, I guess. And so I guess that would be kind of the moral here, is that it's kind of the baboon's fault for having all of his guests laugh at him, is I guess where I can see that's coming from. And so
that makes sense.
The tortoise gets his revenge.
Yeah, I was surprised by the repeated references to making sure you treat people who have different abilities or disfigurements.
Yeah, it was very fascinating because last episode we had a whole god dedicated to protecting those with who were disabled and that sort of thing. So I think it's very interesting the emphasis that's put on a lot of these stories.
Yeah, agreed.
This next story was very, very interesting to me. I think this has a great moral. Tortoise in the hot water test, which is from the Yoruba people of West Africa. So the tortoise is out working in the field with the chief of a village. He's helping him with his harvest, but he's kind of greedy, and so he digs a hole as he's harvesting all these yams. And so as he's harvesting the yams, he hides some of them in a hole and then comes back during the night to steal all the yams that he hid. And so the chief confronts the tortoise, having found his footprints by the hole and leading back to his house and all that sort of thing, but tortoise denies it. So the chief then proposes a hot water test, which is that if the tortoise can drink boiling water without it hurting him, he is innocent. And so Tortoise agrees, but on the one condition that all the other animals that were working for the chief also do the hot water test. And so as they're sitting there in a circle with this whole crowd around them of the villagers, all the other animals go first, which Tortoise insisted upon, seeing as he's the youngest, so it is his right to go last. And so, of course, the boiling water understandably burns all the other animals. But when it comes time for Tortoise's turn, he fills his cup up all the way, and so he makes a very big deal about showing his cup to every single person there. And he slowly goes around to the whole crowd saying, oh, look at me, I'm so good. I've, taken more water than the rest of them to fully prove my innocence. And so when it comes time for him to drink the water, he's wasted so much time going around and showing his cup to everybody that the water has cooled, and he drinks the water easily, displaying his innocence, and he even dumps the water all over himself, just for good measure, I guess, to really rub it in that he is innocent. And so the moral of this story is actually stated here on page 42, if you want to look at the book with me. It says, when Tortoise accuses the whole community, he himself must have a great deal to hide. What do you think about that moral?
I agree with that sentiment. But again, it's another example of I don't know if he's called him a protagonist, but the main character being just a horrible person.
Yes.
I mean, they were harvesting and he wasn't wanting to help out at all. Mm-hmm. And so then he reluctantly agreed, mainly because he had a bad crop that year and he was worried about starving. And instead of just working for what he would get, he would siphon off at least half of what he was harvesting into this hidey hole, and then he and his family stole all of it. And so they were looking for it, and they found his storage unit or whatever it is, full of the other guy's yams. And then instead of just fessing up, he tortures all these other innocent people by making them drink this stupid hot water. And it reminded me of like the Salem witch trials. Like if the water test, if you float, how did it go? If you float, you're guilty. If you sink and drown, then you're not guilty. Well, either way, you're losing. Yes. You're either a convicted witch or you're dead. And very similar physical test on this one.
Yeah, I don't think we're supposed to admire the tortoise. I'm going to be honest with you. I think he is solidly the villain in this story.
Well, true, but it's just, I don't know. But he never got his comeuppance.
Yes, that's true.
Right?
He just completely got away with it.
He got away with it.
Yes.
And it seems like all of these stories, the bad guy gets away with it.
Well, I guess that kind of just makes the moral more poignant, I guess. Chances are the person who's accusing everybody else is going to succeed, and he's going to get away with it.
Yeah, but doesn't that like if you were going to read these to your children, wouldn't they be teaching them to be the most clever and most devious and most evil? Because the evil person gets away with it.
I guess so.
The other fables and the children's stories and all that kind of stuff, the bad person in the end finally gets their comeuppance.
Yes.
The Greek stories especially, if like what's his face, these better than I do, the guy with the wax wings, he flies too close to
Icarus.
the sun, it melts Icarus, with hubris comes nemesis to correct the arrogance and all that. I mean, it's every one of those stories is a morality play, or that you have to be moderate, and you can't go to extremes, and you can't be evil without expecting some comeuppance at some point. These stories don't have any of that. The bad guy always gets away with it. It's very interesting.
That is interesting. I didn't even notice that. That's a good point.
Yeah. And it's bizarre that these would be popular stories, because I wouldn't want to tell this story to anybody. I want that guy to be found out.
Yeah.
I want somebody else to be more clever and catch him in this act where other innocent people don't suffer.
Yeah,
these stories, the innocent people suffer.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's more accurate to the real world, I guess, because chances are, not always there's going to be some protagonist or some hero that's going to, come back and give them the retribution that they deserve, I guess.
Yeah, but that's not the story.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's, more accurate, in a lot of cases.
It's not accurate.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, I think when it comes around to it, the Christian tradition is either you get it in this world or the next.
That's true.
And most of the moralizing stories and fables, they get it in this world, and then they get it again in the next, presumably.
That's true. Okay, moving on to the next story, The Tortoise and the Elephant, from the Akamba people of Kenya. So the elephant, as is per usual, was boasting about his strength and his size. And so the tortoise comes up to him and challenges him to an athletic competition.
Now, this is a little bit better story, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because the elephant was being boastful. Oh, I'm so strong. Oh, yeah? Okay, let's have a contest.
All right, yeah. So first, the elephant is kind of the one coming up with what the athletic challenges even are. So he challenges the tortoise to jump as high as his trunk. So the tortoise says, well, give me just a few hours and we'll have this competition. And so in the meantime, Tortoise has his wife stand on the opposite side of the elephant. And when it comes time for him to jump, the tortoise calls out as though he is, makes the sound as though he's jumping. And his wife on the other side kind of responds with the sound of as though you're landing. And so the elephant is completely tricked and thinks that the tortoise has somehow jumped completely over him and jumped so fast that he didn't even notice. So the elephant then challenges the tortoise to a race. And so the tortoise says, well, just give me until tomorrow. I have to have some time to prepare. And so then he puts his wife and his sons strategically, across this course that they're going to be racing. And so when the time for the race comes, the elephant is running, and he has his wife and his sons call out at strategic intervals. So it always seems like the tortoise is always consistently in front of the elephant. So at the finish line, the tortoise is there waiting for him. and the elephant admits defeat. And so he concedes that size does not equal prowess or strength, and he should not be as boastful in the future.
It's significantly different from the tortoise and the hare, because the hare was arrogant, and the tortoise, I think, if I remember correctly, the original story is the tortoise actually beats him eventually, because the stupid mistakes and the arrogance of the hare. In this case, it's dishonest, because the elephant, while a braggart, was actually accurate.
Yes.
And the turtle is just a cheat and a liar.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you're not wrong. In the original...
And the tortoise won.
Yes.
Yeah, and got away with it.
In the Aesop's fable, the hare is so convinced of his abilities that he even takes a nap along the race. And so when he's asleep, the tortoise catches up and wins. So in this case, it's very, very different in that the elephant is actually more athletically capable than the tortoise, but he's tricked.
And diligent. He actually ran the race, and hustled along, did the work, and still thinks he lost, even though he won.
That's true. Well,
just because the tortoise is a big fat liar.
Yes, you just shouldn't be boastful.
I guess, but he was accurately boastful. I mean, I agree with that part of the lesson. So it's a little bit better than the other ones. At least the guy that got the negative treatment from the tortoise, or from our purported hero, may have deserved a little bit of it, because he shouldn't be bragging, but what does it say? It's not bragging if it's true.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Very true. And
they're wild fables, and I think they're interesting stories, and they do have a moral. But it's not something I would be repeating to my small impressionable children.
I guess you have
as a bedtime story, because why would I do that?
Yes. The next story, these next few stories.
I thought we were done. There's more?
No, there's a whole other section of other animal fables.
Well, I thought we weren't going to go to those next ones.
Nope, This is still within Animal Fables. So you will be flying completely blind, and you'll just have to rely on me.
Oh, no, I did read these.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
okay.
Yes, the chameleon and all that stuff.
Yes, okay.
Okay, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, yes. So this first story...
How the leopard got his spots.
Yes, how the leopard got his spots, from the Sierra Leone of West Africa. So the leopard and fire itself were very good friends, and leopard always visited fire at his own house. And eventually leopard's wife started mocking him, saying, the fire doesn't think you're good enough. You never invite him over here. He never wants to come over. And so then leopard invites fire over, and fire reluctantly agrees. But he says, you must lay down a trail of dry leaves leading all the way from here to your door so I can make it there. So fire then arrived, traveling across the dry leaves. But in his extreme heat, he burns down the house of the leopard, which gave the leopard dark spots wherever the flames touched him. So what's the moral there, Ted?
Don't be a henpecked husband.
I mean, I guess so.
Sometimes you tell your wife to mind her own business. Fire was right. He didn't need to come over and visit. It wasn't because he didn't like leopard.
Yes. That's true.
Unlike the other stories. The other stories, the wife was the smart one and really came up with all the clever ideas. This one, she's just dead wrong.
Yeah. And I think that is interesting, actually, how the wife in a lot of these stories comes up with a lot of the ideas for what should be done, which I think is an interesting thing that I don't think you see too often in a lot of world mythologies, is kind of the wife behind the scenes calling the shots.
You see some of them.
You do see some of it.
It's less typical. Yes, I agree.
It's interesting. Now, the next story I really liked, The Donkey Who Sinned, which is from Ethiopia, Northeast Africa. So a great drought had hit the land, and the lion, the leopard, and the hyena and the donkey all believed that one of them must have sinned, and that God is punishing them for their sins, and that's why this drought is happening. So the lion begins by saying his sin, because they say if you proclaim your sins and ask for forgiveness, maybe this drought will go away. So the lion says that he must have sinned by eating a calf. But all these other animals are deathly terrified of the lion because he's this great big hunter. And they say, oh, no, you're innocent. There's nothing wrong with eating that calf.
Well, the important distinction, they feared and admired him.
Yes.
It wasn't just fear. Yes.
Yes, that's a good distinction to make. And so the leopard then proclaims his sin, saying he ate this stray goat. And again, all the other animals are afraid and they admire him. And they say, oh, you're innocent. That's not a sin. That's all right. That's just your nature. And the hyena, as you might expect, he says he ate a chicken. And of course the others respond saying, oh, you're innocent, there's nothing wrong with that. And then the donkey says that while his master...
Hold on. He's innocent because he's such a cunning hunter. He's the most cunning of them. And the leopard, they said, well, he's innocent because he's the most ruthless hunter. Yes. So they had these admirable traits otherwise.
Yes, sorry, that's a good distinction to make. So the donkey says that while his master was talking to this other guy, that he drifted apart from his master and nibbled on a tuft of grass to the side of the road. And then because they're not afraid at all of the donkey, then immediately say, oh, he's guilty, you're the one causing this drought, and they all pounce on him and immediately tear him to pieces. So it's just a very, frightening tale of, it's basically saying it's very easy to blame somebody if they don't have any power over you. It's very easy to make somebody the scapegoat, essentially, if they can't fight back.
Yes, and it reminds me of partisanship now, where the people that you admire and respect, if they do something really bad, you excuse it. But if somebody on the other side that you don't admire does some little minor, like eating a tuft of grass, like who cares? Then it's like horrible.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that moral. I was just thinking of sort of like the power that some people have, and the power of fear and that sort of thing. But that's a very good point to make about the people you admire, you excuse their every action. That's
correct, right? Even though these involve killing other they're natural for them to hunt things, but the stories were like these animals wandered off from the village, and so they shouldn't have killed in that manner.
Yes,
under normal circumstances, but because they're admired and feared, or at least respected for their other talents. That can be it. It's not that. And then the donkey says, well, I snuck away and ate a little tuft of grass. Get him, guys.
It's kind of like...
go ahead.
So it's kind of like, you're not valuable to us. So, we can just do away with you. We can blame you for everything, basically.
Yeah. I wrote in my book, the ultimate moral of this is don't be a weakling among the wicked. If you're among the wicked, you have to be strong.
Yes. I thought you were just going to end that with don't be a weakling. I was about to say, yeah, that's the moral, I guess.
No, I don't think that's the moral
of
it. But certainly if you're among the wicked, you better be strong. And don't confess your sins. You should have. I didn't do anything wrong. Because all he said was, said this little piece of grass.
The next story is about the two sons, and this is from Kenya in East Africa. So a long, long time ago, all the humans and the animals lived together. The animals all could speak with the humans, and so they all agreed together, these humans and these animals, that they really just did not like the darkness. And so they began to come up with plans for constant light. So some of these elders among the humans said, oh, everybody should just carry a torch, or huge fires should be lit all over the place during the nighttime. So then the wisest man then said that they should pray for a second sun that arises in the west instead of the east, thereby providing light at all times. And nearly everyone agreed except for the hare. And so he calls out in this big crowd of people that's gathered. And so the elders are very shocked. They're like, who could possibly stand against us? And so this hunter sees the hare, and he pulls him out, and he points at him, and he says, it was the hare who spoke up against you. And so the hare is dragged in front of everybody. So he begins to be mocked by all the elders. But then the warrior looks at him, and he tells him to not be afraid and to speak his mind. The hare then pointed out that with two suns, all the waters would dry up, it would lead to droughts, and basically everything would eventually perish. So the elders then realized their complete mistake, and they praised the hare, who was ever after known as the wisest of animals.
Mm-hmm. What's the moral of the story, Adam?
I guess the moral of the story is don't be shamed into being quiet if you think you know what is right.
Mm-hmm. And just because somebody is smaller or not as well known or as well respected doesn't mean they're wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's very true. It's just a very small, tiny little creature. I think that's the point of choosing a hare. It's, not usually seen as the smartest or the wisest animal, but, here we see that it's, even though it is very small, it has the best decision out of all of them to say, hey, it would be very, very stupid to have a second sun in the sky.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I think it has this type of story has a lot of cachet in our present world where there's all sorts of calls from authority. You have to listen to me because I have this degree or have this position of power, and they're all wrong, crying out loud. And there's usually a few weird voices out in the wilderness saying, that's just stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to sometimes listen to those people. So sometimes there's just stupid people saying we're wrong, but there are occasions when they're absolutely right. That reminds me of what's his name?
Do not
Snowden.
know.
No, Snowden. The guy that released a whole bunch of confidential information about our spying apparatus with the NSA years ago. And I used to think, well, that guy's a terrible guy, and for releasing all these secrets to our enemies and stuff. And there was just a few civil libertarians like Glenn Greenwald that were screaming, no, this guy actually did us a favor letting us know what's going on. And now I've come complete 180, and I'm now of the same opinion as that guy that I thought was some sort of anti-American. He wouldn't be a traitor because he's not an American, but so sometimes we need to listen to those people.
That's a very good message, yeah. So the next story, very interesting. Gihilihili the Snake-Man, which is from the Tutsi people of Rwanda. So a middle-aged woman was trying to conceive, and so she eventually finally became pregnant after a very long time of trying to conceive. So 9 months came and passed, but the child did not arrive. And so he stayed in her womb for many years. And so after, several years, it doesn't actually say how long, but we can assume that it's been a very, very long time, this child is finally born. But he's born as a snake. So when he comes out of the womb, his father tries to kill him, but his mother says, no, he's still my child. We can still have to protect him. And so they basically place him in the forest in this little shelter, essentially. And so after some years, the snake shed his skin. And so underneath his skin is the form of a very handsome young man. And he returned to his parents, who basically immediately had him arranged to be married. And so he says that he wanted to be married to the daughter of a noble that he's seen walking through the woods past this little shelter where he lived. But his family was very poor, and they say they can never afford to have you married to this daughter of this noble. So he tells them to burn his old snake skin. And so as they burn the skin, from the fire arises all kind of riches. They get all kinds of, gold and cattle and all these sorts of things. And so they're able to pay the dowry to have this man married to the daughter of this noble. And so the moral is also kind of explicitly written out here. Stated, never allow yourself to be destroyed by misfortune, never despair of yourself or of others, and above all, never condemn a person for his appearance.
Another on that lesson line that you talked about earlier. It's a good lesson.
Yes, it is a very good lesson.
Odd story,
yes.
About a snake boy, but
yes.
Ultimately he's rewarded with, and the family's rewarded, I suppose, because the father, granted, tried to kill him, but who wouldn't if you saw the snake boy? But then he ends up building this little shelter for him and assist feeding him and all that kind of stuff until he shed his snake boy skin and became a dashing young man.
Yes, that's very true. The next story is about how the dog came to live with man, which is from the Bishogo people of Congo. So the dog and the jackal used to be very good friends, and they traveled everywhere together. But one very cold night, the dog saw the fires of a nearby village of humans, and he wished to go to the fire and get to the comfort of this village. So the jackal was very much opposed, and the dog keeps asking the jackal to come with him, just come and sit by the fire, let's go together. And so eventually the dog just gets fed up of trying to get the jackal to come, and so he leaves him. He asks the man by the fire just to sit with him for a little while. And so he warms himself there and eats some leftover bones. And so the man keeps coming back to check to see if this dog is finally gone, because he doesn't particularly want him here. He's kind of begrudgingly letting him sit by his fire. So over time and throughout the night, he realizes the dog is just not leaving. So the dog says that he just wants to live with man permanently. He'll help him hunt, and he'll help protect his livestock and just do all these good things for humans. And so the man agrees. And so the dog came to live with man, but the jackal still calls out to the dog at night, and you can still hear his barks or his cries in the night, calling for the dog to return to him. So what do you think the moral is there?
I don't know what the moral is. It kind of explains how dogs came to live in their villages.
And I think in some of these stories, there just is no moral. That's a thing in mythology. Some of them are just, explanatory, basically. This is how this came to be. So I think this might just be one of those, unless you had a moral you were thinking of.
Well, I mean, except for eventually the dog comes to an agreement in exchange for him doing certain things, and the human's going to do certain things for him. So it's mutually agreeable. arrangement, and everybody was better off for it, except for the selfish, dummy jackal, who we all hate because they're really weird looking and they make weird calls at night.
Yes, that's true. We have a lot of jackals back from home. In
the wilderness of Festus, Missouri.
Yes.
You hear their lonely calls at night.
Calling for our dogs to return. Yes. The next story is The Truth About Coxcomb from the Baganda people.
I've seen it on TV, so I'm not completely ignorant as to the call of the jackal.
Yes.
I've seen documentaries.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to talk about the next story now.
All right.
This is from the Baganda people of Central Africa. So the cats used to live as servants of the fowl, and they beat the cats, and they stole the majority of the food that they hunted for them, because the cats were taught that the rooster's scarlet comb could burn and scar them. Basically, it was made of fire, essentially. So one cold night, the mother cat sent her child to go to the head rooster and ask for the fire from its comb. And so the little kitten goes with a blade of grass to try to light it against the rooster's comb. And of course, this rooster is passed out. They think he's drunk. He's just not waking up. So they have the idea to use this blade of grass to bring the fire back. So the grass did not light, and his mother keeps sending this kitten back twice to no avail. And so the mother cat finally gets up and goes herself to see what's going on with the rooster's comb. And so she discovers that the fowl had lied to them. And so she shook the rooster awake, and he completely fled. And to this day, the fowl still take refuge with men, and they constantly live in fear of cats. Anytime they see a cat, they will bolt. So I think this is another story, a little bit of just, explaining how, roosters and hens and those sorts of things came to live with man. But it's also, I think, a little bit of a cautionary tale, again, similar to some of the other morals we've seen with, just liars, taking advantage of this people that we think, they have this power over us, so we can't ever do anything against what they say.
True. That's right. Good. I agree.
All right. Moving on, I guess, if you have nothing else to add about that story.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think maybe I was a little bit harsher on the other stories, because I guess if that's the theme of all these different characters being dishonest, it would be valuable in the sense that you can't be too trusting. I guess is the theme of a lot of these.
So the last story in this section is about how the chameleon wins a wife from the Kikuyu people of Kenya. So one day, the frog was basking in the sunlight by his pond, and a beautiful girl named Nguma came upon him. And so the frog said that he was cursed and is actually a fine young man, cursed to live in the form of a frog unless he marries this girl. And so Ngema kind of reluctantly agrees, and she's afraid of this curse because he says that, she'll die too if she doesn't marry him. So she brings this frog back to her father. And so as the frog is talking to her father, Chameleon sees Ngema, and he asks to marry her too. But she says that he is far too slow moving for her, and that the frog has already asked, and he is talking to her father now. And so the chameleon then says that empty gourds make great noise, but it amounts to very little in the end. And so with this statement, Ngema kind of realizes that, maybe this frog isn't all he's cracked up to be. And so she agrees to at least have the chameleon talk to her father. And so Ngema's father tasks Frog and Chameleon to gather all of these different goods for them to win his daughter's hand in marriage. And so Frog gathers all these things very quickly, this beer and this food. And so he employs a bunch of his frog friends to carry it on their backs, and they're all hopping along to go to this house to bring them all these things. But as they're hopping, of course, all this beer and this food falls right out of the gourds that they've been keeping it on their back. And so Chameleon takes his time with gathering all of these things, and he's very late, a few days late, actually, to the allotted time that their father gave them. But when he arrives, all of his gourds are overflowing with food and with beer, and so he brings this overabundance of all these things, and he wins Ngema's hand in marriage. So it's kind of another tortoise and the hare situation, I guess.
Right. Better to be competent than to be fast.
Yes. Make sure you're taking your time in your decisions, and actually, if you have the ability to do so, bring an overabundance of what you have to offer, I guess. If you're taking your time to provide a greater service, then that service is worth more than the person who gets it done quickly.
Agreed.
Yes.
Good lesson. I like that one.
That is a good lesson. I really do like that one. Although it is very strange that both a frog and a chameleon want I'm assuming, what is a human girl's hand in marriage. It's very strange, but...
Yeah, well, I think it wasn't the frog. Wasn't he cursed to be a frog?
That's what he says.
Unless he, yeah. So it's not known if it was like a prince in the toad story, or princess in the frog.
Princess and the frog. I think is what you're going for. Yes.
If she kissed him and then poof, he becomes a prince or something. But yeah, a lot of treating the animals as human, not differentiating between those.
And it all really kind of goes back to that symbolism, I guess. You're picking the right animal to represent the beliefs or the kind of values that type of person would have. If you're slow moving but cautious, you might be a chameleon. If you're very fast moving and you don't actually get the job done, you might be a frog, those sorts of things.
Right.
Very interesting use of animals in these stories.
Yeah. So what's your overall thoughts of the African animal fables and stories?
I think they're very interesting for sure. I do really like, I think the big two core messages that we see pop up over and over again is don't be overly trusting, and then don't judge others based on their appearance. I think is the two core values we see here. And I think they are very, very good stories. Just for, the characterization, sort of the symbolism in all of them. And I think they're very interesting to learn about because I didn't know of any of these. I knew of the name Anansi.
Did you?
Yeah, Anansi's kind of one of the most well-known out of all the African deities. I forget where I even heard about it at this point, but yeah, out of all the African myths, I knew of the name Anansi, and that was about it.
I didn't even know that.
Yes,
I never heard any of this stuff.
We're both, this is a good time to reiterate that we're both kind of just going in pretty much blind. I know a little bit more about mythology than I think you do, but
true.
I've read some of the Norse myths, but especially in these areas of the world, I know very, very little.
Yeah, it's kind of they're fun stories to read. They're compelling little snippets of folklore or whatever. I mean, it's much easier to read than some of the more difficult passages of last season in the history of Western philosophy.
Which you should absolutely, if you're listening to this, go back and re-listen to season 1 or listen to it for the first time if you're just joining us for our mythology episodes. But I think it was a very good season, very interesting.
Yes, agreed. We were very good.
Yes, we are very good at this. We're the best. Yes, we're so good.
Well,
we're probably the only ones who have done a season 1 on philosophy and a season 2 on world mythologies. So I think we're the best in our field.
That is correct. Yes. It's important to be very good at what you do.
Yes.
Even if what you do is not valued by anyone else.
Weren't some of these stories about not being boastful?
Well, I'm not being boastful because no one else is doing it. So it's easy to be the best at something no one else does.
Yes, that's very true.
We're also the worst.
Yes, we're also the worst. That's an important distinction to make.
But, and by a strange twist of fate, you never know. It may be after some sort of world cataclysm that happens years and years from now, the only thing that survives human history for the aliens that come to Earth is the recordings of these podcasts.
Yes, and they'll have a pretty good sum of knowledge, I think, from all of Western mythology and then Western philosophy and world mythology.
Yes.
So
I think it's unlikely, but
it's very unlikely that this will be the one thing that survives out of all of humanity. But who knows? Yeah. Maybe we'll get very lucky and we'll get a lot of downloads in the year 200 or something.
Well, if the aliens come to visit us, maybe they'll be inspired by us, and they'll come down here and they'll say, "Take me to your leaders, Mark and Adam Bishop."
That is the most likely scenario.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been...
We've listened to all their podcasts.
Yes, of course. This has been episode 2 of season 2 of Unlimited Opinions. You can follow us on Twitter at capital U, lowercase LMTD, capital O Opinions, for updates on whenever our next episodes are live. This
is the Double Deuce episode then, which coincidentally is the name of the bar,
it's Roadhouse,
and the best bad movie ever made, starring Patrick Swayze, Roadhouse, starring a bouncer, a character who is a bouncer with a philosophy degree from NYU.
Oh, there we go.
Did you not know that? Have you ever watched that movie?
I have not watched that movie, but you
next time you're back home, we're gonna watch it together.
Yes. Okay, I can agree to that.
All right.
All right. Well, I've been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.
And this has been Unlimited Opinions. So Roadhouse is on the agenda for next time I come home.
Yeah, but it's rated R. There's some bad scenes in it.
All right.
and the funny thing is that like the TV version, that is what I first saw it on as TV, like edited. They kept in all the violence, but they took out the brief nudity scenes, and so it was okay for TV to show Patrick Swayze's character. Well, I don't want to give it away. Well, it's not a giveaway. He ripped out the throat of one of his opponents.
Wow. Okay.
It killed him, of course.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I don't think did they show him with the throat in his hand or just kind of dramatized it? I think they might have just dramatized. Well, we'll rent it. We'll watch it. That's good.
So maybe at some point in the future, I'll have opinions on Roadhouse 2 on one of these episodes.
You will have an opinion, guaranteed.
Well,
whether it be positive or not.
That's the name of the game, Unlimited Opinions.
But it has one of the best philosophical lines, and the one that I truly believe from all movie history, which is pain don't hurt.
Yes, pain don't hurt. That's a good opportunity to end this little end cap here.
Oh, you don't want me to give me more? Okay, we'll do more next episode.
Okay. More Roadhouse next episode. That's a guarantee.
More Roadhouse wisdom.
Oh, good God.